Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, Lucid is a visual collaboration suite that helps teams see and build the future. Virtual whiteboarding, intelligent diagramming, and cloud visualization all come together to empower organizations to take plans from initial ideas all the way to successful delivery. And together, they're utilized in over 180 countries by millions of users. In fact, 96% of the Fortune 500 use Lucid Chart, and customers include Google, NBC, Universal, T-Mobile, and so many more. But I wanted to find out more about the success of this company, because since the Utah-based company's founding back in 2010, it has received numerous awards for its business, but also workplace culture. And from day one, I've been reading about how the team has been scrappy, innovative, and wildly successful. But the company holds true to its core values, which include teamwork over ego, innovation in everything that they do, and individual empowerment, initiative and ownership, passion and excellence in every area. What is the key to this success? So today I've invited Bryan Stallings onto the podcast to shine a light on the different ways that businesses are nurturing neurodiversity across not only the tech industry, but every enterprise, all by creating a setting of welcoming different perspectives. And let's be honest, if you've got a complex problem that you need to solve, you're going to need different perspectives, not a room full of people who all think and act the same way. And Bryan appeared on my radar when I was reading how he appreciates that every single employee approaches communication, problem solving and collaboration in their own unique way. And this came from being a father of 4 neurodivergent children and applying learnings from the home to solve technical and human problems in the workplace. And he has seen firsthand how neurodiverse individuals offer STEM sectors the capabilities that can improve everything from productivity, innovation, and engagement. And these are all huge topics in business right now. So buckle up and hold on tight, because it's time for me to beam your ears all the way to Utah in the US, where Bryan is waiting to share how he personally recognizes the values of neurodiversity at home, in the workplace, and also offer a few tips for business leaders in creating a setting of welcoming of neurodiversity through revised routines, different tools, etc., all to help every individual contribute more effectively. It's a huge topic, this one, but enough from me. Let's get Bryan onto the podcast now. So, massive warm welcome to the show, Bryan. Can you tell everyone listening a little about who you are and what you do?
Right. Well, first, thank you for having me, Neil. It's exciting to be on the podcast. So I would say I'm the son of a creative mother and a scientific father, and their influences gave me a lot of focus on personal growth and have made me really curious in my life. I'm the husband to Jennifer. We celebrate our 30-year anniversary this year. We have 4 children. I'm really passionate about our world and about people, and I live here in the United States, but I think it's important in the way I view the world that I've lived in Mexico, Central America, and South America. And in addition to English, I speak Spanish, and I still speak a little Portuguese.
Oh.
Professionally, I'm an international business school grad who brings that perspective into the roles that I've had have all been in technology. So I've been focused on continuous improvement and what I call bringing humanity back to the workplace. It makes me a hands-on leader, and my stance shifts between teaching, mentoring, coaching, and facilitating. And one thing I think that's been a big part of my career has been I joined what's called the Agile product development community in its early years back in 2003. And it was just getting started at the time. And I've spent 20 years working to enable high-performing teams in that space. Today, I'm the chief evangelist at Lucid Software, where I help our customers to embrace visual collaboration and adapt the way they work so that they can build the future faster.
Well, a huge warm welcome to the podcast. And you used a word there, perspective. And I think in the world of technology and solving complex problems, one of the most important things is multiple perspectives and neurodiversity. And that's one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast to talk about today. So To begin with, just to set the scene for our conversation, can you explain the concept of neurodiversity and why it is so important in the tech industry?
I think when learning about this concept, it can be helpful to think about the term biodiversity, biological diversity, which would refer to the variety of life here on Earth. So neurodiversity is a term coined to reflect that as well. It's a compound of neurology and diversity, and it refers to human neurological diversity, or the variety in how all of our different human brains and minds think. It's about the way that we're wired, and we're not all wired the same. We're each unique. And so that means sometimes we have different traits, or that we function slightly differently in the way that we think and act. It might give us unique skills or abilities or needs, and it can impact things like our social dynamics or motor skills, maybe our attention, our language, or how we learn.
And I know this is something you've had personal experience with, both at home and in the workplace. So I'm curious, how have these experiences shaped your perspective on the value of neurodiversity in the workplace and beyond?
Well, so I have 4 children, and each of them are neurodivergent. And I should probably explain that word as well, that in that some have adapted the term to classify individuals as either neurodivergent or neurotypical. And these are just ways of trying to suggest what average might be, although average is a very gray space, right? Who's to determine what's what? And so I try to think about neurodiversity as being much more inclusive, that all of us are diverse in that way. So as my children grew, I started to learn more and more about this because I've been working to advocate for them in the world. And so we have children who have ADHD or attention deficit hyperactive disorder. I have 2 kids that are dyslexic, and I have 2 that are on the autism spectrum. So I only have 4 kids, which means some of them have multiple or comorbid circumstances. And why is this important in technology? I would say that we see that there's a greater prevalence of neurodivergent individuals in STEM fields, for example. And so therefore, there's a greater propensity of them employed in technology organizations. And I think about this because I'm really curious. I want us to be more inclusive. I want us to be prepared to empower more individuals because of what I see their potential can bring to our organizations. And it creates like richer interaction, stronger teams, more innovative solutions. To have that diversity of thinking in our teams, it can give us a competitive edge and a really thriving culture. But, if we don't adjust the way we think and perceive and recruit, we're not going to have the opportunity to add these incredible talents to our organizations.
100% with you. And I think there is so much progress being made, and we are learning to celebrate our differences now. And on that side of things, you mentioned a few moments ago, but can you expand a little on how neurodiverse individuals can contribute to things like productivity, innovation, and engagement in STEM sectors? Because all these areas are so critical right now. And I think it is something we should shout about more.
We see this, for example, in data coming out of colleges that, for example, I think it's 34% of college students on the spectrum enroll in STEM versus only about 22% of the general population. So the likelihood that we'll find them in tech careers is high. And in my experience, that's been the case. About 1 in 40 people they say that we work with probably have neurodivergent circumstances. So this can help us improve the way that we work and think, as I was mentioning. And in fact, it can help improve our productivity. When you give an individual the right environment and a few basic accommodations, you may find that some of these individuals can be up to 140% more productive than their neurotypical colleagues. It's just sometimes this tunnel vision and focus and capability that they bring. So oftentimes they also may have higher than average abilities, such as, for example, research in autism and dyslexia suggests that those individuals may have special skills like pattern recognition, higher memory, or capabilities in mathematics. Yet, because of some of those social nuances or difficulties, those individuals struggle to fit the profile that employers might look for. Like, just think how many job descriptions you've seen that suggest that we must have good social interaction skills. And maybe an individual such as my son isn't going to be seen that way for certain. And so if we don't shift our perspectives, we're preventing many exceptional individuals from getting opportunity.
And it's such an important point you raised there. And I think businesses are getting better at understanding that diversity of thought is actually critical to serving diverse audiences. If you've not got a diverse workforce, how can you serve a diverse audience? And also, it's critical in solving complex problems. It's no good if we're all thinking the same, trying to solve a problem and getting nowhere. And I'm curious though, on this side of things, how can leaders create a more welcoming setting for neurodiversity in their teams? And are there any specific actions that they can take to help individuals contribute more effectively? Is there something they could be doing?
Well, I think it has to start where I've been trying to start, by becoming more aware. And so that means we need to be more informed, and that will lead us to have greater understanding. And so if we as leaders recognize that many of these conditions are extremely common among our peers, just being aware of that and suddenly seeing, it helps us to understand, and we can destigmatize these cognitive differences. I think leaders need to use inclusive language. Like I mentioned, some of the things we put in job descriptions may cause people to feel like I can't apply for that opportunity. Even sometimes the way we interview are going to shut individuals out. And so there's lots of ways that we can adapt our hiring process as we recruit, for example. Just, for example, sharing questions in advance so that an individual can feel less anxious, may be something that helps them to do much better in an interview, or giving them written instructions about what to expect, or extra time to respond, and not interrupting while they're thinking. That's, for example, something that my daughter really needs. So we then need to create a really welcoming and supportive environment. Like we have at Lucid, we have a Slack channel that's called #neurodiversity. And you may not ever know that it's there, but if you went to visit that channel, you'd find individuals who of themselves have opted to join the channel, and they're sharing with each other conversations about what's difficult or how they tackle different challenges. And I see people join the channel and say, I had no idea this was here. And suddenly it feels okay to talk about what they might need in order to thrive. And so that sense of safety is really important for us to create. So finally, I would say, we can't overlook neurodiversity in our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. We may be looking at all kinds of different ways we need to be more inclusive, and neurodiversity may not even be in our thinking or in our process.
Completely agree. And it's not just about, I think a lot of businesses think they need to reinvent the wheel, but sometimes it's just being more welcoming, more mindful of the needs of individuals. And a lot of things that we see in the workplace can already make a big difference. And on that side of things, can you tell me a little about how agile principles and Scrum practices that we've often seen in the workplace, they too can support neurodiverse individuals, and maybe share a few examples from your own experience around this too?
Sure. So I've been working in that context, in an agile or Scrum context, with software teams for 20 years. And I've done a lot of teaching and coaching of those types of teams. And as my children grew up a bit, I started to notice that some of the practices we were using at work might be solutions to help us organize things and support our kids at home. And so having worked with these neurodivergent technologists, I started to identify what practices or patterns might be useful. And so I can share a couple of ideas, Neil. So I think one thing that really helps is a pattern of stability for an individual, where we know what to expect for the coming week, for example. And that may mean in Agile, we do something called creating an iteration. We know it's going to be, say, 2 weeks long, and we're going to do planning on certain days, and we're going to do sort of a big reveal for our stakeholders on the final day. And certain activities are always on Tuesday or always on Wednesday. And we repeat that every single 2-week period. So that creates a great sense of certainty that can be really powerful. We also want to define success. What what does success look like? What are our goals? Are we all on the same page? And what does it take to get something to be accepted by our customer? In Agile teams, we create transparency, like making certain that people can see and understand what the work is going to be and who's accountable for what and how we're making decisions. We also meet daily to coordinate and align on the work so that everybody has the support they need. And we build strong bonds with intentional teams and providing that support structure, even sometimes pairing individuals together so that we can be successful. So I just mentioned a bunch of things in common business language, Neil, but these are all things that we could switch and put the Agile or Scrum language on. And you'd see that the same structure we're trying to create, for example, with my kids at home, is really powerful in the workplace.
Absolutely love that. And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little research on you. And another thing that I learned was how you stress the importance of defining success for each individual work item. Can you elaborate on that and explain some of the benefits that it would provide neurodiverse team members too?
Yeah, I would ask our listeners to wonder if they've ever struggled, think back to a time when they may have struggled to communicate their expectations or to have another individual receive and understand them.
Yeah.
It's like asking my son to clean his room. I say, clean your room. He comes back in 2 minutes and he says, I'm done, Dad. Say, well, let's go take a look. And he rolls his eyes, right? And so when we look, I see that there's a lot of things that I think mean clean the room that aren't done, like clothes hanging out of the drawers or the closet a mess or things like that. And so I've had to say, well, what does it mean to clean your room? Well, when he was young, he loved to go to hotels. And so I would say, Nathan, I want the room to be hotel clean. And he would say, hotel clean. He knows what that means. So that helped clarify as a young kid what we're talking about. But anybody who's worked with another might know what it feels like when somebody says, we make the joke, bring me a rock. And then you do whatever that thing is that the person in authority needed. And they say, no, not that rock. So we have to define success for teams so that they know what it takes to get an item done. A technologist who's trying to build something and they don't know what the finish line looks like gets really frustrated and anxious. But when we can be really clear that it needs to be green, it needs to function at this speed, it needs to have this language, and it's something that we want in the 2-week iteration, then they feel really certain that they can move forward. We call it gold plating when we don't know what to do and we keep elaborating and polishing something, hoping it's good enough. So we want to know what the finish line looks like.
And for any business leader listening, inspired by your story and your approach here, just to bring to life everything we're talking about, can you expand on how Lucid software supports and also enjoys the benefit from neurodiversity in your teams? And also, how do your product help teams, including those with neurodiverse individuals, to collaborate more effectively? Is there anything you can share around that?
Sure, yeah. This is an area I'm really passionate about. We get to work with a wide variety of individuals, and I see all of these different teams, and each team, of course, is going to be a diverse team because of the nature of all of us working together. And at Lucid, we have a really strong culture of inclusion and teamwork. And in fact, one of our values is teamwork over ego. And so we're really focused on what can we accomplish together rather than the hero culture of one individual. We also create an environment where it's safe to express what you need, and to ask for those accommodations, maybe in changing things within the team so that we can work more effectively. I would say also working from home has enabled a big shift. A lot of us do that today because if you're a neurodivergent individual, you might have something set up ideally for your circumstances at home. Maybe those sound preventing headphones that you like to put on when you're in deep thinking process. And so if you come into the office, you may not have all of those idealized situations. So a lot of people are able to have just what they need, but still collaborate given the really great tools that we have. So I mentioned that neurodiversity Slack channel, and we oftentimes have conversations in that channel that help us adapt our culture and the circumstances in our organization. And we're building great products that we get to use ourselves that help teams. These products are really able to help create something that we call visual collaboration. That's what Lucid builds as products for visual collaboration. And it allows individuals to quickly portray your ideas and thoughts in a diagram and then connect with others to collectively reach quality outcomes. You think about how much more effectively you get to an understanding when you can illustrate what you mean. And people nod and say, yeah, okay, that's not quite what I had in my head, but now that I see it, I get it. And it quickly speeds our understanding, and it creates certainty and alignment. It's really an efficient use of our time. And these tools work really well for these diverse teams because you can work synchronously or asynchronously in them. And so we're creating the tools to enable teams to work that way anywhere in the world.
I love that motto there, teamwork over ego. And your passion for this topic really shines through in our conversation today. And you're already streets ahead of so many enterprises out there. But I've got to ask, where do you go from here? What's next for Lucid in terms of supporting neurodiversity? Are there any other upcoming initiatives or plans that you're particularly excited about?
Well, it's interesting that our time to talk came today. We couldn't have planned this better because we just had a big launch day yesterday, and I'm extremely excited about some of the new features we launched, and they're great features to support a diverse team. One of the new features we launched is called Visual Activities. So think about a digital whiteboard where you can drag out an activity to help individuals who may not be comfortable speaking their perspective, but instead they can share that in a visual way just by quickly voting or dragging items around the canvas to indicate their preferences. And you can adapt and create those visual activities to support large and small teams alike. We also introduced something called Team Spaces, which is creating a persistent virtual space for teams. So now these teams, when they log in the morning, they see a visual indication of their team environment, even though they may work in many places around the world. And they spend time in that space together, doing their collaboration, adding notes, creating their diagrams, making their plans, making decisions. And that space, that visual space, they can customize. I see examples of like team outings and photos. I see things like, how are you feeling today? Quick links to all of their favorite resources, and really powerful techniques to work together visually in a way that creates inclusion for people who may think in many different ways.
I think that's a beautiful moment to end on. I love everything that you stand for on this. And before I let you go, though, I'm gonna have a little bit of fun with you here now. We started the podcast talking about your origin story, the journey that you've been on. And as we come full circle, I'm going to ask you to look back at your career and share the funniest or most interesting story that has happened to you. We've all got a few of those stories, but what is yours? What are you going to leave me with today?
Well, Neil, I would say I've saved this story for 20 years. And so since you're here, I'll share it with you and our listeners. And it takes me back to 2003. I was in an organization where I first learned and introduced Agile. I hired an individual well-known in the technology space and the Agile community. I hired Ken Schwaber. He's the co-creator of Scrum. I hired him to consult with us. And during his first day on site, we held a session with all of our software teams. And during that meeting, Ken dropped the F-bomb twice, at least, saying these swear words while he was speaking to the group. And that was absolutely not accepted within our organization. In fact, the VP of engineering had a jar on his desk, and if you had any curse words, he would make you pay $1. And then that went to charity. So after this meeting, being the host to Ken Schwaber, I was approached by the engineering and HR executives, and they quietly gave me the task to figure out how to discreetly get Ken Schwaber to the office of our HR exec for a casual conversation where she planned to inform Ken that he couldn't swear like that. Now, Ken was in the Merchant Marines as a younger individual, so he's a bit salty. He's an expert as well. And so we wanted that relationship to work. And so, Neil, I made that happen without him knowing, probably even to this day, that when we stopped by the VP's office, she had planned to meet with him. It wasn't just a coincidence. And yet, I can admit that he didn't ever completely stop swearing. He used to take out a $5 bill and put it on the table when he met with me to just be prepared. So that's my story. I saved it just for you and our listeners.
Absolutely love it. What a brilliant story. Oh, man. And for anyone listening that, as I said earlier, might be inspired by your story and the great approach and how you're leading the way here, maybe they want to have a discussion with you, your team, about the work you're doing. Maybe want to find out more about Lucid. But whatever it is, where would you like to point everyone listening?
I think, Neil, the best place for y'all to find me is on LinkedIn. I post there regularly. I share thought leadership there, the articles that I'm writing. You can see the past publications I've worked on listed in my profile. I love to add people to my network, and so I invite you to look there. So it's Bryan with a Y, Bryan Stallings on LinkedIn.
Awesome. And we're having this conversation today at a time when the UK Commission for Employment and Skills found that 43% of vacancies in STEM are hard to fill due to a shortage of skilled applicants. An industry known for logical and analytical minds. It also needs to ensure it supports and drives ingenuity and creativity. And I just cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me today, shining a light on the different ways that team leaders and business leaders can nurture neurodiversity in the tech industry and create a setting welcoming of different perspectives. That's got to be a huge leap forward in terms of progress. But thank you, Bryan, for shining a light on this today.
Thank you, Neil. And I thank our listeners. If we can make a difference in the world, there'll be a place for my kids as professionals and everybody who can bring their capabilities.
This is one of those conversations that will remain with me for a long time. And I think it's Bryan's passion for creating a setting that is welcoming of different perspectives, not only in the workplace, but also making a difference and ensuring his children have a place in this world. When he said those words, it really hit me directly in the heart. And if you're a business leader today and looking for some takeaways on how you can welcome a variety of perspectives, Bryan left us with some pure gold nuggets there, from establishing patterns, planning and executing work in iterations of a consistent duration, and defining success, describe each work item in a way that satisfies the team needs, and also creating transparency, empowering the team to determine how and when they will do the work. And finally, applying agile principles and Scrum practices. As a parent and business leader, Bryan witnessed firsthand how breaking up tasks into smaller increments help to promote alignment and minimise confusion for neurodiverse individuals. But over to you. Me and Bryan barely scratched the surface today. His story was so powerful, but I know this is a topic much bigger than both myself and Bryan, and I want to hear your stories, your methods, your expertise, insights, what you found helpful, etc. And I invite anyone that has been impacted by today's episode to email me directly, techblogwriter@outlook.com. Send me a DM or a recorded message on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, just at Neil C. Hughes. If you prefer to send an audio message, just hold down that audio button, send it over to me. I'll either feature you on the show, invite you on the show, or just share what it is that you've shared with me, if with your permission, of course. So let's keep this conversation going. It's so important. So please send me a direct message, send me an email. We'll keep it going. I also cordially invite you to join me again tomorrow, where we'll have another great guest. And hopefully we can all make progress together. As I always say at the end of every episode, technology works best when it brings people together, and you and the guest are living proof of that. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.